Thank you and good morning. That's Charlie. I'm Warren. You can tell us apart because he can hear and I can see. That's why we work together so well. We usually have our specialty. It's Jack's 88th birthday on Monday. So I just say happy birthday, Jack, and thank you on behalf of American investors. And Jack, I've got great news for you. You're going to be 88 on Monday, and in only 2 years you'll be eligible for an executive position at Berkshire. So hang in there, buddy.
Well, I think that's perfectly clear.
Finally approval all these years. It was only because we felt that people would not be buying necessarily a lower price candy. I mean, it does not work very well if you go to your wife or your girlfriend on Valentine's Day. I hope they're the same person. And say, here's a box of candy, honey. I took the low bid. It doesn't. It loses a little as you go through that speech.
Yeah, but it's also true that we were young and ignorant then, and
now we're old and ignorant. Yeah.
Yes,
he was not interested in the business, and he was more interested in girls and grapes actually, and he almost changed his mind. He did change his mind about selling, and I wasn't there, but Rick Aaron told me that Charlie went in and gave an hour talk on the merits of girls and grapes over having a candy company. This is true, folks. And the fellow sold to us, so that I pulled Charlie out in emergencies like that. To the specific question, how much time is spent reviewing the holdings, I would say that I do it every day. I'm sure Charlie does it every day. Charlie?
Well, I don't think I got anything to add to that either.
We'll cut his salary if he doesn't participate here. The only insurance operation in the world that would write that sort of a contract and where it would be satisfactory to the other party. I mean, when somebody hands you $10.2 billion and says, I'm counting on you to pay $20 billion back, even if it's 50 years from now on the last dollar, there are very few people that they want to hand $10.2 billion to. So there's limited people on the other side. I mean, there's not that many people remotely that have that kind of size deal.
Very few is a good expression. He means one.
Yeah.
We picked up a lot of low-hanging fruit in the old days where it was very, very easy and we had huge margins of safety. Now we operate with a less advantageous general climate, and maybe we have small statistical advantages where in the old days it was like shooting fish in a barrel. But that's all right. It's okay if it gets a little harder after you get filthy rich.
Yeah. Charlie's more philosophical than I am on that point.
Well, I can't bring back the low-hanging fruit, Warren. You're just going to have to keep reaching for the higher branches.
I think Coca-Cola's been a very, very positive factor in America and the world for a long, long time. And you can look at a list of achievements of the company. And I really don't want anybody telling me I can't drink it. Charlie?
Well, I've solved my Coca-Cola problem by drinking Diet Coke, and I swill the stuff like other people swill I don't know what. And I've been doing it for just as long as you've been taking all those Coca-Colas that are... I've had breakfast with Warren when he has Coca-Colas and nuts. And
pretty damn good, too.
If you keep doing that, Warren, you may not make 100.
Well, I think there's something in longevity to be feeling happy about your life, too.
Absolutely.
He drove it away without any plates. He was driving back to New York, and he got picked up by the police in Illinois. And he said, well, he started giving this explanation about how he'd given this money to Girls Inc. and was driving the car back, and he had this nice-looking family with him. And the cops were quite skeptical. But fortunately, I had signed the dashboard for him as part of the deal. And so they looked at that, and then they just said, well, did he give you any stock tips? And they let him go. And I can't recall ever selling a used car at a profit, but I don't think I've sold any personal possession. Well, I've got a house for
You
sale.
don't have any personal possessions.
Yeah. No, anything you see with a figure attached like that.
You're a fatter version of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi.
The guy was a very nice guy that bought it, and his check cleared, so we're fine.
I said, I don't want to do that. So he said, it isn't because you're so special. He says, there just isn't anyone else.
If you're ever proposing to a potential spouse, don't use that line. But that's what he told me, and I took it well, and we made a deal.
They do care about how the equipment is used in terms of poultry and egg production, in terms of the nuclear weapon question. I'm very pessimistic on weapons of mass destruction generally, although I don't think that nuclear probably is quite as likely as either biological, primarily biological, maybe, and maybe cyber. I don't know that much about cyber, but I do think that's the number one problem of mankind. But I don't think I can say anything particularly constructive on it now. Charlie?
Well, I don't think we mind killing chickens. And I do think we're against nuclear war, so.
2021, if the common's above $7, which I would certainly anticipate, we will exercise. So that's all I can tell you on that, but I certainly wish you success on your other objective. And I think probably the fellow will be using very good judgment, too. Okay, Charlie?
Well, I think it's a very wise thing for a woman that owns Berkshire stock, woman to put her picture up like that.
It does give me a thought, though. We might actually start selling ads in the annual report, and that incident, that BFA purchase, it literally was true that I was sitting in the bathtub when I got the idea of checking with the BFA whether they'd be interested in that preferred. But I've spent a lot of time in the bathtub since, and nothing's come to me. So clearly, I either need a new bathtub or we got to get in a different kind of market. Freeman, I think it was, used to talk about the time, probably apocryphal. He would talk about the huge construction project in some communist country, and they had thousands and thousands and thousands of workers out there with shovels digging away on this major project. And then they had a few of these big earth-moving machines behind, which were idle, and which could have done the work in 1/20th of the time of the workers. So the economist suggested to the local party worker or whoever it was that, why in the world didn't they use these machines to get the job done in 1/10 or 1/20th the time instead of having all these workers out there with shovels? And the guy replied, well, yeah, but that would put the workers out of work. And Friedman said, well, then why don't you give them spoons to do it instead? 16 billion back when we were much smaller in a period of 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks maybe, in the fall of 2008. And we never got to a point where it was any problem for me sleeping at night. Now we obviously have a lot more money to put out. So if a good, Charlie, at what point, if I called you, would you say, I think that's a little bit big for us today?
I would say about $150 billion.
Well, in that case, I'll call you. Yeah. I'm a little more conservative on that than actually Charlie, but we both would do a very, very big deal.
We don't have to agree perfectly.
Yeah, it'd have to be. But if we find a really big deal that makes compelling sense,
Now you're talking.
we're going to do it. There's a very high probability that will be from somebody that's been in our company for some time. I mean, the world could change in very strange ways, but that's a very, very high probability. Charlie?
All I can say is that my back hurts, and I come to these functions because I want to indicate to my fellow shareholders that they probably got 7 more good years to get out of Warren.
Charlie is inspiring to me, I got to tell you that. But we've been very, very, very lucky in life, and so far our luck seems to be holding. But I have gained no real knowledge about tech in the last, since I was born, actually. Charlie?
I think it's a very good sign that you bought the Apple. It shows either one of two things: either you've gone crazy or you're learning. I prefer the learning explanation.
Well, so do I, actually.
I think buying the Apple stock is a good sign in Warren. And now he did run around Omaha and ask if he could take his grandchildren's tablets away. And I mean, he did market research, and I do think we keep learning, and more important, we don't unlearn the old tricks, and that is really important. You look at the people who try and solve their problems by printing money and lying and so forth. Take Puerto Rico. Who would have guessed that a territory of the United States would be in bankruptcy? Well, I would have predicted it because they behave like idiots.
We did not buy any Puerto Rico bonds.
No. There are a bunch of very ambitious cardiologists and heart surgeons in Reading, and they got the thought that really what a heart was a widowmaker. So every patient that came in, they said, "You've got a widowmaker in your chest, and we know how to fix it." And so they recommended heart surgery for everybody. And of course, they developed a huge volume of heart surgery, and they got very wonderful results because nobody comes through heart surgery better than the man who doesn't need it at all. And
Nobody should be roadkill in this sort of
remember
society.
what Bismarck said? There are two things that nobody should have to watch. One is the making of sausage, and the other is the making of legislation.
Yeah. Well, I would say this: somebody ought to watch.
Remember when Warren got on this subject and they asked him what he wanted said at his funeral? He said, "I want them to all be saying that's the oldest looking corpse I ever saw." and
That may be the smartest thing I ever said. What's your dream now? She says,
my dream, well,
let's skip the first one.
sometime when I'm especially wishful, I think, oh, to be 90 again. And I got some advice for the young. If you've got anything you really want to do, don't wait till you're 93.
No.